Hello, everybody, and warm welcome to new session of the DevCamp 8, session number 6. Today is a 14 October 2021. Again, we have a bunch of lovely friends here. I'm really happy to be here with you. I love you all. Let's go to the Guillem and start the session. Thank you.
Yay, thanks for the intro, Hedayat, and hello everyone. So as Hedayat said, we're going to start by solving the challenge, but I would like to hear from any one of you who thinks they have a good idea about how to solve the challenge, or they have some pseudocode written. Just unmute yourself and let's expose your solution. It's a really small challenge, so shouldn't take more than 30 seconds. And yeah, does anyone have any idea about the resolution for the challenge?
I've got a chunk of pseudocode.
Oh, wait, yeah, sorry, Shane, I just forgot. We didn't show the challenge in the actual recording, so people will be lost when seeing this. Yes. Just a second. So this is the challenge, right? So let's say that in the application that we are writing now in the UI, we want to render a list of all the games that have been created, right? So we have an anchor. This is everything that we already did, right? So we have an anchor and game codes, right, that have been created with create game code function. And now the challenge is to write a get all game codes function that returns all the game codes that have been created in the DHT, right? So we don't have this function in our application because we don't need it, but in a normal application, like requirements change, and this would be a reasonable requirement for our application. And the challenge was to create some kind of pseudocode that could accomplish this requirement, right? So yeah, Shane, go ahead.
Should I just post it into Discord? How do you want to do this?
Yep, just post it in the Discord. I think it's easiest.
Okay. Let's see, session 6, something like that.
We have two answers. Soshi 888. So, you are showing them. Okay,
yeah, I'm showing them. Okay. Do you want to go over it a bit and explain it? What did you do?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. So you can start by getting an anchor with certain tags. See that there's an Hdk function called anchor that takes in 2 strings. So I'm thinking we can get the anchor type, or we can get back something related to that. And then you got to make a mutable vector, create a variable called links of type links, and then you can use that anchor to get all those links of a certain type, loop through the links, and pop out all the elements, all the related elements, do all your error handling, pop them onto the vector, and you return the vector, and that should get you all the game codes.
That's amazing. Yes. Well, I don't have to resolve it. It's already resolved. I hope this made sense. That's a really good job, Shane. I'm just going to share the prepared a bit of code to actually show how the code would look like. So the trick here is that we don't have any input parameters, right? As we don't have any input parameters, we have to start somewhere, right? So if you imagine all the entries in the DHT are like a graph of entries linked with each other, you need something to start with, right? You need some entry from which to jump to other entries if you want to do a query or whatever. And here is where the anchor pattern, like having anchors, is essential. And the anchor, just to reiterate, this is content that we have already covered, but it's so important that we get this right that I'm going to reiterate a bit. So The all game codes anchor is an anchor that everyone knows because it's hard-coded on the DNA, right? So this is a global entry that everyone will know exists, and everyone agrees that anytime that there is a new game, we are attaching that game to that anchor, right? So if you see, this step is actually the tricky one. The step that Shane did here is actually the tricky one. And how would you do this in code? Well, more or less you would do something like this, which is here, it's a bit convoluted, but don't let that get in the way of understanding, right? So what we are doing here is essentially reconstructing the global entry that's going to be stored in the DHT and calculating its hash. It's really important. This isn't actually creating any entry. This is just calculating the hash of the entry, because you can calculate the hash from any content. You can hash it and you have the hash of the entry, right? And this is the hash that everyone has agreed that its entry will exist in the DHT. So we calculate the hash, we get the links from that hash, and like Shane, like it's almost word for word, you create a new vector, you iterate, you get with the link target, right? So link target, this will have, this is these links, and the target, we are getting these links, this is going to return 1, 2, 3 links, and the target will be the entry hash of the targeted entries, right? So we are going to get links with this with this entry hash, with this entry hash, with this entry hash. And we only have to do a get at this point. So get, you can get anything if you know their hash. So you get, and if the element exists, you try to transform it. And if everything goes all right, you push it to the results vector and you return.
Just a little question. Be sure. So it's an entry hash the link is pointing, or an element hash? Just between
links are always between entries.
Okay, thanks.
Not between elements. You cannot link from a header, for example. You have to link from and to an entry, always.
But that link in itself is a header, right?
That's a trick question. That link was created with a header, with the create link header. And
but
now
no
if
entry.
Sorry, what's that?
But no entry.
No. Right? When you do create link, it doesn't actually create an entry. It creates a header. Mm-hmm. And that header attaches some metadata to the base entry. Right? And then here in this link, you actually have the create link hash. And this is the hash of the header that was created with create link.
Okay. I think I get you.
Right? So if I go inside link, I have link tag, target, timestamp. Most important one is the target, right? Mm-hmm. We don't have the base because we already had the base. If we are going to do get links, we already need to have the base. Mm-hmm. And we have the create link hash, which is the hash of the header of this link.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So it's I used to think that you can only have one anchor per cell, I guess, but it sounds like you can make an anchor for whatever you want, like get all the game codes or get all the players or get all the whatevers. It sounds like some common point that everyone is aware of.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Like anchors in themselves are nothing special really. It's just an entry, a normal entry with a string that we all agree exists. And if we agree that 10 anchors exists, then we are going to have 10 anchors. The same as if we agreed, okay, so for example, I don't know, let's say that we are in whatever, we need to be publishing some reports at the end of every month, if we publish the report and everyone agrees that there is going to be a report every month, well, there is going to be a report entry every month. Like there is nothing special about this anchor entry, apart that it's so widely used that it's already baked in the HDK. But it's not like, it's just another entry, normal entry that you attach links to. And its purpose is to be the starting point from which you start to query the graph of entries.
I also have one more question, Guillem. I don't want to confuse anyone, but if you create an anchor, if I create an anchor of type game codes anchor, and I have an anchor text that is some game code, because here now we have anchor text none. So when I create an anchor with that type and with a text, does it mean that there's also an anchor created with text none?
That's right. Okay. Actually, this is what's happening here.
That's cool. I did not know that.
So in the code that we wrote, we are doing this, right?
Yes.
Which is anchor, and we have game codes anchor as the type of anchor, and short unit code, right? This is what would go in here.
Yeah.
Right. So here in the anchor has type and text. What Holochain does is, okay, you want to create a new anchor for this game of type game codes anchor. Let me help you, and let me also create a global anchor of type game codes anchor that links to all the game codes anchor and all the game code anchors.
Very cool.
Right.
So that allows you to find all the anchors of a certain type.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay.
This is extended with the concept of paths in Holochain, but we are not going to get into it. Like, just know that there is a bit more about anchors that we are going to get into in the future. Okay. Any other question about the challenge?
Well, yes, but they are not for now. So I would like to pause them, which is error handling. It's still confusing to me in terms of Rust, not on Holochain. So obviously we're not going to discuss it now. And I'm seeing a lot of functions or methods, rather, I guess. In order to explore them, where should I start in the Hdk documentation? Because I'm not going to read everything. Which are the parts of the Hdk that I should go into?
Right. So yeah, let's resolve those two questions right now very briefly, and if you need more, we can expand. So
if you need to do Discord is fine. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah. No worries. Very briefly, a question mark is your friend. Okay. Every time that a Holochain action returns an error, it's pretty safe to just return a question mark.
Okay.
And this question mark says, whenever there is an error here, interrupt, don't execute this following code, and just return the error here.
Okay.
Right? This is what you need to know. I don't think you need to know much more than that. Just to code these simple applications that we are coding. And as far as the Hdk documentation goes, well, you have 80% of what you will need in Holochain development will be create entry, get links, create links, update entry we are going to cover today, and get. Right? This is mostly what you will need 80% of the time while coding Holochain. So if you can start on reading that the documentation for those functions, that's a good point.
Okay, thank you. That helps because I tend to go down the rabbit hole by accident a little bit, and I would need some restraint. Thank you so much.
Totally, and I'm sure there are many other people with the same problem. Okay, so having done the challenge, we are go.
Again, can I share my screen about the anchor? That
Sure.
so anchor can be a little bit tricky. I covered it in one session, Holochain in action, but in briefly to be sure that we are on the same page, I'm going to share my screen. So do you see my screen?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes. Look at the anchor.
We see like Nastasia. Okay, it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, I got it. Yes. So look at the DHT as this lake and the fish that your content or entry. You know, you want to fetch them while you don't know where are they. Just look at the anchor as a fishing hook. You know, look at them. It means do not think that as a limitation. If you would like to take this fish back you would like to hunt this fish from the lake, which is DHT, you need to put some fishing hook just to connect to them and just take this one in here and it's going to bring all the fish. This one can be any string, can be your email address, anything that you can easily generate it. Your name, your any fixed any string or any entry that you can easily regenerate it, and as much as you would like. That's it. So the question that is there any limitation in Anchor? No. It depends. When use Anchor and how to use it, it depends. It depends on the situation you would like to query this fish. If you believe you need to query in a way that it is hard to find this entry in the lake, make more complex anchor. How to make even more complex anchor? For the later we can cover it. If the anchor is confusing, just imagine you are going to do a fishing from a lake. That's it.
Cool, thanks. So I'm hoping this is beginning to land. This sounds silly, but with this, like anchors, links, entries, you're going to cover so much of the needs of your application. Like it's amazing. All the other stuff that's in the HDK cover basically more edge cases, like, okay, we have to do a mutual credit transaction and we have to countersign things and things like that. But the main thing we are already experimenting with, which is creating entries, attaching links, getting the entries, getting the links. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show which functions we are going to be creating today as we advance in the development of our game, Tragedy of the Commons game, in the playground, so that you can get a sense of how will the entries interact with each other and what links we are going to be creating, right? So first understand and why we are creating things this way, and then we are going to go to the code. Okay, so this is the same link as the other session. You can just go and play with it again. Today, we are going to code just one new function, which is make new move. And we are going to do some modifications in this function, a start game session with code, right? But just a new function for today. Right, so where were we in the development of our code? So we were able to create a new game, attach it a game, like set a game code for it, and have other people register for it, right, with the player profiles. And then we were able to also create a new session, right, for that game code. But our game is such that it needs to have different rounds, right? So at each round, every player needs to make a move, right? And when all the players have made a move, the round needs to close and it needs to update the state, right? This is the basic flow that our game will have. So in the Tragedy of the Commons app, you will see that every player can make a move and then they have to wait until everyone else has made a move and then they can finish the round and start the next one, right? So how are we going to be covering these requirements in our application, in our code? Let me refresh. Cool. So I'm going to hide the agent entries for now. They are distracting more than helping. Let's go through the flow of a game inside like executing these functions, which is what the UI, for example, is going to do to see how are the entries interacting, right? So create game code anchor. This is the game code that the UI is going to be generating. So game code 1, right? And I'll execute, and I'll actually don't care about the animations right now, so I'm just going to fast forward them. And as we talk about, this is the challenge, right? There is a big anchor that contains only all game codes, and that big anchor links to all the game codes that have been created, right? So now I'm going to join the game with code for Lula, and Lula execute. Perfect. Now the game code has a link to the player profile, but we need 2 players. Okay, so well, we need 2 players. I'm saying that I want 2 players in this game, otherwise the game is a bit sad. So Colette. Now I have selected Colette, and Colette is going to execute join game with code with a different nickname, right? Execute. And with what this is going to do exactly. So we have a big anchor linking to the game code, and then the game code has a link to all the profiles for all the players that have been inside the game. Okay, so now Lula, who is the one that created the game, is going to start the session, right? So what they are doing is, hey everyone, the period of registration for the game is over. We are going to start. So what happens when I pass game code 1? It creates the session. We already saw that in the previous session. In the previous session of the DevCamp, not this previous session. Okay, there is some wordplay here. Doesn't help us that much. Anyway, so I execute. Let's start the session for this game. Okay, what's happening? Oh, a lot of things are happening, right? Okay, let's organize this a bit because it's really messy, like it is. Okay, here it's better. Okay. So what we already know that the anchor links to the game code and the game code links to all the players. Okay, what just happened when we called create new session, right? So what the code did is it went into the game code. It asks for all the players that have registered for this game, and it creates a game session containing those players. Right, so this makes sense in the sense that we are hardening. We are saying, okay, nobody else can register. These are the only people that we are going to be playing with, right? And this is inside the game session. And now, also, what we have is a link from the game code to the game session, so that anyone that comes inside the game code and tries to register can go and say, okay, wait, there is a session already started, so we can't really register anymore, right? And the new thing that we are seeing right now is that a game round is created for this game session, right? So every game session will have multiple rounds, and those multiple rounds will have multiple moves, right? So at first, when we create the session, the first game round is already created for us so that we can already start playing, right? We don't have to wait for anything else to happen before actually starting playing the game. Okay, let's see what happens when we actually make a move. So Lula, make a new move. And here, if you see, it's asking for the round entry hash, right? So we have to say, we are making this move for this round, right? And the round is identified with the entry hash. So what I'm going to do is click on the round, and here you can see the contents. Copy its hash here, paste the hash here. I'm just going to make a new move like this. Okay, and I don't know what happened? Oh, there is some bug. Wait just a second. Going to recreate exactly the same. I was experiencing some of this before. Let's try again, and if not, we are going to go with the code. That's okay. So join game with code with the nickname Coseta. Execute. Start game session with code. And here I'm just going to have one player. That's okay. Execute. And then make new move. For this round. Okay, let's see. Yes, cool. Okay, we got it. Cool. So, same situation as before, but only with one player. Sorry about that. And now we can see that there is the game session, and this new round has a move, right? So every time we create a move, we are going to create a move and attach it, link it from the game round to the move, right? So that we then can say, okay, get links for game round and get all the moves that have already been made by some player in this game, right? So this is what we are going to code. Okay, I'm just going to pause there. Are there any questions about this design? This is mostly the design. This is what, as Holochain developers, not designers, the input you have is normally the design of your application, right? So it's basically, you get this and you have to code it, right? So it's really important that we get used to understanding designs and understanding why things are happening. So, any questions around this?
Yeah, I have a question. Can you quickly differentiate the difference between the solid links and the dashed links? I think I missed that.
Yep. Okay, I don't think we explained that, so good question. So the dash links are not really links, they are embedded references, right? What this indicates is that inside the game round entry, we put the hash of the game session, right? Here it is, right? And it's represented on the graph because it's a way from to go from one entry to the other, right? If you know the game round, you can go to the game session. But it's not really a link, as in you don't have, if you do a get links in game round, you're not going to get this link. This is an embedded reference here. We can go to game session has this embedded reference to game code, and here it is, anchor. Right, this is the hash of the game code anchor that we are going to that the game session is about, right? And we do this, like if you see the pattern is quite clear. We have created things from left to right, and the pattern is from left, you create at first. When you create the right entry, you put the hash of the left entry and you put a link from the left to the right, right? And actually, there should be a link from game session to game round also, but it's not displaying here. There is some error, but there should be a link between session and round. So it's like this, right? Every time that you create a new thing, right? So session about the game code, round about the session, you're attaching some hash inside the entry contents here, and then you are linking from the first entry to the new one, so that you have both ways discoverability, basically.
Right, that makes sense. And I suppose there's an advantage to embedding the hash rather than creating it and then linking it back. I guess because you have the hash when you go to create the new element, so you're able to just embed it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. And then also links are prepared to be relationships of multiple, right? So one game code links to all the profiles that have been created, right? And instead, if you have just a reference, is a relationship of one to one, right? So a game session can only be about one game code, right? It's not like I'm going to be attaching links from the same game session to different game codes. That doesn't make really much sense, right? What I do want is that this game session has inside it information about the game code it was about. Okay, so I'm in this repository. Holochain DevCamp 8 Game of Commons. And like, as we said in the break, there is only a README inside the main branch, but now there are branches for every session. And for example, the session 4 builds on top of session 3 branch, session 5 builds on top of session 4. So these are more like tags, if you want to call them that. Like really, they are checkpoints, right? So if I go to session 3 scaffold, that's just the scaffolding code, right? And the actual code for the game logic will always be inside DNA, Zoom's game logic, and then source. But here we have just run the scaffolding, right? Because in the session 3, it was only a scaffold. So session 4, okay, and you can see it's growing. Session 4, we did this function. Session 5, session 6, which is the one that we are doing today. Yeah, and this is basically it. Okay, so I'm going to continue with the coding, right? So let's go here and let's code the functions that we have seen in the playground, right? So the functions that we are going to code, there is only a new function that we want to code, which is make new move. But then we also have to modify the start game session to make it so that the first game round is created at the same time that the game session is created, right? So for that, I'm going to do the same thing that Nastasia did last session, which is I'm going to switch to the first commit after the session 5 branch, right? So this is just some modifications on top of the session 5. And let's look at the modifications. So we have added a new game round file, right? So basically, we had the session. We need to define a new type of entry, that's the game round, to which we are going to be attaching the links, right? We can't really attach the links only to the session because then links from different, moves for different rounds would be mixed in together, everything inside that session. We don't want that. So we create a new game round entry. I'm sorry, is this screen size okay? And font size, can you see? Okay, perfect, thanks. So we are going to define a new entry called game round, right? And the game round will contain the round number, right? So first round will be 0, second round will be 1, and so on. Importantly, it will have the session hash for like the session of this round, and then it's going to have the state, right? And this is basically the state of the game. What's inside the state of the game? Well, inside the state of the game are things like resources left, which is what we are seeing in the UI. Okay, 90 resource remaining. This is here. Resources taken and resources grown are really complementary data. They are not really necessary, but just for you to let you know that, hey, this last round, 20 resources were taken by all the players, right? And then we also have the player stats, which is a dictionary, right? We already covered this in the previous session, which is for every agent, how many, what's the amount of resources that they have taken out of the commons, right? So every round, we are going to be updating this round state. So first round, this is going to be the initial state. So no moves are played yet. So we are basically going to fill this with initial data. And then at every round, we are going to get all the moves for the game. We are going to recompute the round state, and we are going to create that new round with the new state, right? So this is the basic structure of the game round. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the game session now, and here start session with game code, which is the function that gets called from the front end, and this calls new session. Here, we want to not only create the session, but create the round, right? So now I'm just going to switch to the new commit. Exactly right. So now this is the same function, right? New session. It's creating the session. And apart from that, now we are creating the round 0 as well, right? As you see, we are initializing, and we have just created this helper function here, which is like a bit Rust idiomatic. I like a lot the way that Rust solves these kinds of issues. So you can define for this struct, you can say implementation of game round, and you can attach functions to both the struct itself or an instance of the game round, right? So if you think in Java or C++ or things like that, this function would be like static because it doesn't actually require any game round instance to call it, right? You just do game round new, right? If I were to say, for example, update round, whatever, here, if you see if the first parameter of the function is self, then it's a function attached to the instance, not to the struct, right? Now, if I go here, I can't do game round update. I can do new, but I can't do update. Okay, this is weird, the autocompletion, but you will not be able to do this. What you will be able to do is get round 0 dot update, right? Because this is a function that is attached to the instance. So we have a new instance here created from this static function. From the new instance, we can call functions attached to the instance. Okay, sorry about the Rust detour, but I think it's important to know what's happening a bit and so on. So this new function is just initializing the actual structs that go inside the game round. So no actual logic here, just some initialization, right? So we come back to the new session function, and then it's defining round 0, which is basically the initial state of the game. Here you can see that we are passing as resources left, we are passing the start amount from the game parameters of this session, right? So we are creating a round for this session, and since we know the session, we know the parameters with which the game is going to start, right? So we can just initialize the first game round with the start amount for those parameters, right? And player stats is empty because, well, there hasn't been any moves, really. Okay, so we just initialize the game round here. We create it, right? We actually have to create the round. Otherwise, like this isn't creating anything in the DHT. For that, we have to do create entry or create link or update entry or whatever, right? Okay, and now what we want to do is from the game session, we want to create a link to the game round, because otherwise, how are people going to know that this session has, okay, where is the round for it, right? We need to be able to navigate between the game session and the game round for people to go, okay, and the game started, where is the round? I can see the round, I cannot create a move. So we need both ways discoverability, as we said during the playground demo. Okay, so we have to create a link between the game session entry hash and this new entry that has been created in the DHT. So we need its hash, right? And this we hash the entry to calculate the hash, we create the link, and that's that. Right? Quite simple at this point. Not a lot of weird things are happening, just some more initialization logic put on top of the code that we already had. Cool. So next up, we are going to add, Okay, and actually, yeah, let's switch to this. What we need to do now is start to care about the game's moves, right? So we have, for a game, we now have a code, which is an anchor that links to a session, which is defining the list of players, which links to a round, which is defining the first round. And then from that round, we need to link to all the moves for that round, right? And then we are going to create a new round in the future, and new moves will be on that other round, right? So we have created a new game move file, and it's really, really simple at this point. Like, we are only having a new entry definition, which is game move. And in that game move, we are going to say which round this game move is about, and the author of the move, and the resources, right? So what defines a move that some agent makes? Well, who makes it, what round it's about, and how many resources does it take, right? So for now, the only thing that you can do in this game is take resources from the pool, and this is the way that you do it, by specifying an amount here. You could say, wait a minute, the author of the game move is already in the header of the game move, right? Every header contains the author, the timestamp, some metadata. So why do we need to put this owner agent public key here, right? You could ask that, and that would be a really interesting question. So let's say I could have the game move like this, right? Okay, yes, but then what happens? Imagine if you and me are playing a game. So I don't know, Hedayat and me are playing a game. And for this round, we take the exact same amount of resources. What's going to happen is that our entry is going to look exactly the same, because it's the same round and we both take 10 resources, so the entries are exactly alike. What happens there then is that when you hash this entry for the same content, like you will have same hash, right? So you will actually have the two moves colliding into one entry. And when you create an entry, when I create an entry and Hedayat creates an entry, they are going to be collapsed into one. There are some cases in which you want that, but here we do not want that. We want to be able to differentiate between moves by the links, and the links point to entries themselves. So we want to be differentiating the entries. So what differentiates Hedayat's moves than mine's? Well, basically the author of the move, right? So we just add the author of the move, which is redundant. We don't need that information because it's already in the header, but we do need it to avoid collisions of different moves in the same entry, right? And this is a really important point when you are designing the your structs and your entries and so on. I don't expect this. This is something that takes practice and takes like, okay, in this case it works, in this case it doesn't, but I'm just raising it as a flag that you have to pay attention to. This is something that you will have to ask yourself every time that you create a Holochain app. Okay, what do I put inside the entries? Do I want my entries to collide between each other or not?
So this is a matter of the art of writing Holochain apps more than the science or the rules, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
May I ask for one example where you would want to have hash collisions? Because I've understood that you put it to avoid hash collisions, not so much as an identifier to find data in the DHT. That's what the anchor or the fact that you have public keys from other entries is for. It's not for that. It's not for discoverability. It's for hash collision. But when would be an example where you would say, okay, hash collision is nice?
Yeah. The clearest example I can think of is file storage, which is if I am to publish a file in the DHT, the contents of that file are going to be hashed, and that's going to have a hash in the DHT, right? So imagine I publish a file in the DHT and it has a hash. And now you want to actually publish the exact same file. We actually want those two files to have the same hash. Because if they have, you don't have to actually publish the file. It's already there.
Yeah.
It's not stored as two files anymore because the file is already there. You don't have to, and this is the duplication of files, right? So you have this both, this trade-off, right? You want multiple entries and then you will get differentiation between the entries and so on, or you want the duplication, right? So if you and me create the same entry in the DHT, only one entry is going to be held because it's the same entry. Like the ID of the entry is the hash. And since we have the same hash, then there is no need to be publishing 16 megs or 100 megs of another file, which is actually the same one that you already have, right? And this is the nice thing that you can have in Holochain in cases like file storage with the duplication.
Okay, thank you.
And if I can add another one here, just imagine for any logic, it means in the app design, you would like to create two entry and guard one of them that nobody can touch it for some reason, and another one can be updated, can be deleted, can have a little bit more action at the top of it for any reason. It's based on the logic of application. You can also have a two identical entry, and in the business rule, you can guard nobody can in some conditions update it for whatever reason.
And you could do that by hashing it with your, let's say, agent public key, right? So
Yes.
let's put one for them and one for me, and I make clear that this one is mine because it has my public key.
Yes, exactly.
All right.
Exactly. It means when I create, I'm going to stop anybody update. You are doing the same entry, the content is the same, but you would like to allow others to do that. That's exactly.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Cool. So let's move on. I'm quite close to finishing, so let's finish this and then let's have some Q&A if we have time. So let's move forward with the commit. And now what we have done is created a new move function, right? Which is the function with which you create a new move. So first we have defined the move, and now we are going to define a function to actually create that move, right? So actually defining the move doesn't actually do anything in the DHT or and it doesn't do anything. Okay, so we are creating a new move. Oh, important, sorry, you will bump into this. When defining the game move, and we had defined the struct, but we now have put the game definition inside the entry defs for Holochain as well. And if you don't do that, then Holochain won't know about this Hdk entry, right? So this Hdk entry doesn't really register. It just defines and attaches some logic to this struct. Then its entry definitions the way in which you notify Holochain that, hey, there is a new entry, right? And you will bump into this, so pay attention to the entry definitions that you have declared in your entry defs array. Okay, going back, there is a new move function, and what we are going to do here is basically, hey, the UI has, the user from the UI has wants to make a new move with these many resources for this round hash, right? So the UI needs to know which round hash we are playing, and then make new move as a function receives which round this move is about. What we have to do really is just create the move and link it from the round, right? And you see it's the same pattern that we have been doing all over again, which is from the game code, you have to create a session and link it. From the game session, you have to create a round and link it. From the game round, you have to create a move and link it. And this is the, what do you call that in UML or something like that? This is the hash or multiplicity relationship, right? So one session has multiple rounds, one round has multiple moves, right? This is the way that you express that in Holochain.
You mean the many-to-many relationship?
One-to-many, thanks.
One-to-many, okay, sorry.
Yeah, one-to-many. So, okay, we are going to just define the contents of our game move. We are going to create the game move. We are going to compute the hash, and we are going to create a link from the round to the move, right? And this should already be quite familiar because it's exactly the same thing that we are doing. Right, so on the right, this is game session, which is what we went over just 10 minutes ago, which is creating round, hashing round, creating link from session to round. And here it's creating move, hashing move, linking from round to move. So you can already see what we said about having create entry, get create links, and like these 5 core functions be mostly what you need in order to code Holochain applications, right? This is what we are doing all over the place. I do want to note some important thing here, which is in centralized architecture, you would be needing which agent is actually committing the move here, right? This is the way that you would do it. It's like, okay, make new move. Wait, but which agent is making the move, right? And the UI is telling you, hey, I'm actually this agent. In Holochain, the back end is the agent. And you have multiple backends running in the same application, but the backend is the node, the Holochain node that is running the application for me, for example, right? So this backend already knows which agent I am because the node is the agent, really, right? The UI only communicates with the node externally. So what we can do is get that information directly from inside the conductor, like this. So with this, we are saying, hey, conductor, get me the information of the agent that is executing this code, right? This code is going to return different things depending on the node it's executed at. If I'm executing it, it's going to return my public key. If you execute it, it's going to return your public key, right? And this is a very important point. It's really a silly thing in this case, but in more general, it's crucial to get this because you're not coding from the point of view of the whole network anymore. You're coding imagining yourself as an agent in the network, right? So if you have noted, there is no get all the entries from the DHT. There is no get all the users. There is no select all from whatever, right? You are not seeing things from the top level perspective of the network. You're seeing things from the perspective of an agent. What do you want to do as an agent? Do you want to traverse all the graph of DHT entries? Okay, go ahead. It's going to be expensive. Do you want to just traverse your source chain, your local source chain that you have stored in your conductor? Go ahead. That's really fast. You already have that inside your node, right? You don't have to go ask that to anyone else because it's the action that you committed. You have them stored in your source chain, right? So yeah, this is it really. Like there is no more code to cover, but I do think that emphasizing this point is really important because here it's trivial, but when we get to things like countersigning at a mutual credit transaction in which, I have to code here one request function, request signing, which is what the sender is doing. But here below, I'm coding a response or handle request, which is what the recipient is going to be coding. And this code has to actually check that this request here is valid, right? It's not like this is executing it on the same computer. This is executing on one node, and then this is executing in the other node. So this other node doesn't really know about what the first node did other than the data that is passing in. So we have to verify the request and things like that. I don't want to go into too much detail in this point, just to foreshadow a bit and just to have this pattern in your mind, right, as you code Holochain applications. Yep, and really this is it. There was the update content, Hedayat, but I would suggest to skip it for today and to go over it in the next session, because it's a whole another topic on its own. And maybe we can take some questions. What do you think?
Yeah, that's great, Guillem. Thank you.